But honestly, if you haven't put in 20 years of hard moshing, you can't retire yet. You just quit. You dropped out of moshing.
You didn't even sign up.
Right.
He has dreamed about this his whole life. Oh, fuck!
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is yet another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. Today, we are bringing on the man powered only by stage dives, the man, the myth, the legend. It is an absolute pleasure to be welcoming on Mr. Vogel, Scott from TERROR, onto the show. Thanks for coming on, man. I'm really excited about this one.
Thanks for having me, too. I'm excited. Thanks for having me. I'm excited, too, as well.
Absolutely. So I've been sharing a little bit of the context of, having a particular guest on the show before we get into the actual interview. Your inquiry, I think, for me came at a very interesting time. I know you're traveling a lot and, there's times where TERROR is flying somewhere versus being in a van. There was one time on a work related trip where I needed to buy Wi-Fi on the airplane. And I do not recommend it's abysmal as far as even just sending an email, but your inquiry to come on the podcast came when I was 40,000 feet or whatever a plane is. I was high in the sky when I got your email about, the new record and wanting to find ways to help promote it. So I'm really, so that has just stuck with me as far as when that happened, as well as, TERROR just put out, brand new record that has been the talk of the town. And I definitely want to be talking about TERROR's kind of Western Canada weekend that happened back in 2018. That was something that is very pivotal as far as the Scoped universe is concerned. But, I'm giving a little too much away. All in all, I'm just really excited to have you on, Scott. And, you've been a guest that I've thought about having on the show for ever since we've started here. So
glad to be here. So where are you located? Calgary?
So I live in Calgary, Alberta, Western Canada. And so I've been living here. I think when you guys came through and did Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, that was I had only been living there for maybe a year at that point, so it was still super fresh for me.
Forgive my mental block, but who did we do those shows with that you speak of? Was it Counterparts?
No, it was JFK. JFK set up that show.
No, but who else played? Was it just us?
You guys were the headliners, and we'll get into this, but it was essentially I think it was just a fly-in scenario, and then all the support was all Western Canada bands from BC and Regina and different parts of Alberta as well. I was rewatching the Calgary set before we were jumping on the call here, and there was you were shouting out one of the bands that had the vocalist had broke his neck to TERROR, and that was my friend Eli. And so there was just a lot of very wholesome Western Canada things happening on that set. So yeah, it was just you guys and a bunch of friends, honestly. So
how is Mr. JFK? Is he all right? Life's good?
He's good. I saw him when Comeback Kid was doing some shows with Miss Sigs and Cancer Bats. My band opened up one of the Calgary dates, and we got to. I haven't seen him probably since that show, just with all the COVID time added to that. But yeah, he's doing well, and I've honestly, JFK, if you're listening, because I've been bugging him to come on for an interview as well. But he's very particular. He wants to do it with someone. I'm like, no, I want to interview just JFK.
Really? Mm-hmm. Only fishing talk?
I guess so. I might need to do a little bit of JFK fishing research for his episode. But Scott, before we get into the weeds of the episode, it's tradition here to do a bev check. So how about you go first? Tell me what you're going to be sipping on for the episode.
Okay, I wasn't aware of the Bev check thing, but I'm going to show you two Bevs, because originally when we got on this call, I had my phone stuffed in a coffee mug, but you told me it was the wrong way, so I had to take it out. I had to go horizontal. So this was the cup that I had it stuffed in.
Mm.
So I figured you're Canadian, you absolutely must love hockey. And
Absolutely.
my beverage is kind of a fantasy beverage, because I'm not as healthy as this looks. It's water with a slab of lemon in it.
Not a slice, a slab.
A quarter of a lemon.
Yeah. When you were saying I had my phone originally in the coffee cup, I thought you were going to be like drinking with the phone. I was like, wow, that is commitment, but I respect it. But that's a good bev of choice. And shout out to the Sabres. I've I originally grew up in Winnipeg, which is the dead center of Canada. I can't remember if and when the last time Terror would have played there, but my dad, who now lives in Toronto area, we had driven down to Buffalo to see the Jets play the Sabres.
Oh, nice.
And there's definitely a lot of Jet transplant kind of fans that now live in Buffalo or drive across the border to do that.
Very cool. Very cool.
Do you drive up often to Canada living in Buffalo now, or is it just kind of like it's there?
Well, up until a few months ago, the border was closed.
Right.
The only time I've gone to Canada so far is to go to Hamilton to go to IKEA.
Oh, okay.
But there was a Hatebreed show that was with like Megadeth and stuff like that. That got canceled, so I had planned to go to that. I think Hot Water Music played up there recently, but we've been touring a lot recently, so a lot of my would-be reasons are blocked by my being out of town. And so no, I haven't. But getting over the border was really easy to make that amazing IKEA trip.
Mm-hmm.
So I foresee it happening more.
Does Buffalo not have an IKEA?
No, it doesn't. The closest one in the US is Pittsburgh, which is my cat is crazy. 3.5 hours, and up there is like 45 minutes.
Well, I would just assume that IKEA is just all throughout the States, but I guess that's the thing that I'm learning super early in this podcast is that
I'll tell you something,
slim
since you're
pickings.
from Winnipeg.
Please.
Comeback Kid plays here tomorrow, so I will be seeing them.
Oh, well, you have to tell Andrew we did this podcast, and hopefully you can tell him that it was as good of experience that he had, because I've had all but 2 of the members of Comeback Kid on the podcast. Chase is coming on in a few weeks, and then I'll had completed the entire lineup. Current lineup, okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, we could just go back. It would be cool, honestly, to interview someone like Scott Wade.
Yeah,
like
for
the
sure.
Original vocalist. But that's for later on. As far as bevs for me go, it's Saturday. It's hella hot.
You're letting
here
loose
in Calgary, so I'm just doing a White Claw. Nothing fancy. Just I got like the variety pack, and that's what I'm
lime?
rocking. Natural lime. So I don't know if there's a difference between just lime and natural lime.
You got the lime, I got the lemon.
Yeah, there we go. I love that. I'll cheers you to that.
Major citrus.
Awesome. Scott, really stoked to do this podcast, bro. You got the lime, I got the lemon. What is better, a lime or a lemon?
For me, a lemon by a mile. I don't know why. I'm not huge on lime. I really dislike lime on a tortilla chip. But
I totally agree. Lime flavored tortilla chips they should be ridden from this world.
If I had a Corona beer, I'll put the lemon in it. But if there is no lemon, I will go with the lime. But
that's interesting, because I thought for Corona, it's the lime is
Right.
the standard, but
Yes. I'm wild. I go off the beaten path.
lemon supremacy, I guess. Well, Scott, you've done a plethora of interviews, in a lot of the years of terror. I always ask every new guest on our show kind of their like hardcore origin story. So as short, medium, or long that you want to make that kind of spiel.
Sure.
Yeah, just tell me kind of like the entry point into this whole thing for you.
Well, funny enough, where I live right now is about a mile from the venue when I first got into hardcore that I saw so many amazing bands. And now me and my girlfriend drive past it a lot, and she's already at the point of saying, I know, shut up. I'll be like, I saw Bold there. I saw Rest in Pieces there. I saw Judge there. I saw Gorilla Biscuits there. I saw blah, blah there. And she's just like, I know, please shut up. So my brother, his name's Jay. He's in a great current band playing guitar. The other guitarist in his band is Jesse, the drummer of Buried Alive. They're called Pure Heel. He's actually my stepbrother. But that doesn't really matter. He's my brother. But for sake of the story, dude, what is wrong with you?
You're talking to your cat?
Yeah, he's going crazy. So when I was first growing up in my life, I lived with my mom and my two sisters. But at a later point, yo, get out of here. Sorry, everyone that's watching. I had
all the
a
audio
smackdown.
Listeners must be like so confused, but
He was like going crazy. And I've got the phone on a little TV tray with the mega
it's a
water.
delicate setup.
Yes. Anyways, so at a later point in my life, I moved in with my father. He had remarried, and so I moved in with my brother Jay. I had up to this point lived really far out, and Buffalo is the second biggest city in New York State, but it's not a big city. Ooh, so I'm not a good guest.
No, you're doing great.
So he lived closer. So I lived like, let's call it out past the suburbs in the woods. So when I moved in with them, he was more in the city, and I guess had more of a ear to the street. So he was into things like the skateboarding, the Sex Pistols, Circle Jerks. I, at that time, he also was, but I was into like Motley Crue, Rat, glam shit. He was also into like Run DMC, Houdini, like early hip hop. So I was thrown into this new world, and I was, he's actually a few months younger than me, but, so he's like 3 months younger than me, but this was all new to me. I was in a new environment trying to figure out who I was in this world. We're talking like, 1986, somewhere around there. So I would go with him to some shows, more punk shows and more like local shows. Like we would see, this sounds crazy, but like the Goo Goo Dolls were a local band, and they would play like tiny. We probably saw the Goo Goo Dolls a couple times with 100 people there. All sorts of things, like anything that was kind of like edgy and underground. So like kind of garage rock and like things like that. Early shows I can remember are like the Dead Milkmen, Butthole Surfers, stuff like that. I was attracted to the energy, but definitely not like the Mohawk type punk anarchy thing. That's like really not my thing.
It was what you felt versus what you saw at times.
I think I like the thing that it was a little intimidating and dangerous, and people were a little not so normal, and the energy of the mosh pit and stuff. Yeah, animal beef everywhere.
My one dog is like, they'll just barrel through, and that one is like, I can't move. I can't get through this small crack. So, sorry, continue.
Yeah. So eventually, a huge thing for me was my father videotaped for us, like on a VCR. Night Flight was playing has a lot of Canada in it. The Social Distortion, Another State of Mind, which is, if you don't know, Social Distortion's from California. They turned this school bus into a tour bus with Youth Brigade, and they tour across the country. A lot of it's in there's a very famous part. Welcome to the Calgary Manor. Have some chili. So they definitely play in Calgary.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
They're at a punk house. I think they play Vancouver. So yeah, they definitely go through Canada. But for me, and I really do. I still do really like Mommy's Little Monster. I think the first Social Distortion album. That was the one band, the punk band that maybe I listened to the most at that time. But during that movie, their bus breaks down in DC, and they stay at the Discord house, and Minor Threat's in it, being interviewed, as well as they show Ian. He worked at Haagen-Dazs or something, scooping ice cream at work, and live show. And so this was maybe my first exposure to shaved heads, a little more clean cut looking. I've never been straight edge, but their attitude was a little more, let's help the world as opposed to let's destroy the world.
Right.
And that really clicked with me. Let's just, for the sake of the story, which probably isn't true, the next day I ran out and bought that Minor Threat record. It's the blue one with, I think, Ian's brother on the cover, like this or whatever. Mm-hmm. From there, so this is when we're transitioning from punk to finding out what hardcore is. So let's say it's 1987 now. A really early show I saw was DRI with Gangrene, the Goo Dolls. And I would credit that as my first hardcore show. From there, a friend of mine that lived in the same area as us, but he went to a Catholic school, so he didn't go to school with us. He gave me a cassette that was Warzone, Don't Forget the Struggle. And on one side, this is a dubbed cassette. The other side was AF, Victim in Pain. I remember after that, I went to the record store here, Home of the Hits, and then one day I bought the Sick of It All 7-inch, the No for an Answer 7-inch, the Chain of Strength 7-inch, and the Side by Side 7-inch. And let's just say from there, it was game over. All we did was look for hardcore shows, go to hardcore shows, and eventually started with my brother, started Slugfest. And that's a big, huge, humongous part of my life up until today.
Yeah, you've really laid a lot of the initial groundwork, and I think the cool thing to hear, and I'm sure a lot of people can attest a similar experience to them, is like finding just the energy of the contagiousness of that, and then the ultimate why behind like the lyrics and like the attitude. Like it's kind of like instead of giving a middle finger to the world, it's like, well, how can we work towards a better future? So I've said multiple times here on the podcast, it's like the sound might get people in the door, but like the message and the why can really cement it and kind of galvanize people to stay. So yeah, like a lot of really cool things. And like you said, like once certain records were in your hands and going in your ears, it was game over at that point. So let's fast forward a little bit now and just talk about like, I'm sure, again, you've probably talked about it on like multiple podcasts, so feel free to do the condensed version, but tell me like how the idea of Terror like originally came to be, and how, if that has changed, over the years, because Terror, in my opinion, is known as this like undeniable force, and COVID or not, has always just tried to keep rolling as frequently and as, actively as you guys are. Was that since day one the mindset, or did that just evolve over time?
So the way Terror began was all the bands I did in Buffalo, Slugfest, Despair, Buried Alive, all of them, I think were pretty good hardcore bands. And as soon as we, started to get some, what's the right word, momentum, the bands ended. None of those bands, from my perspective, reached their full potential and broke up way too soon. Buried Alive maybe is the one. Maybe that's not true. Anyways, when we were kind of still in the thick of it, we all broke up for various reasons. The last being Buried Alive, I quit and moved to the West Coast. At that point in my head, I was like, I've done these bands. Every time I get something going, it implodes. I'm kind of done with doing this. So myself and my girlfriend at the time moved to the West Coast. When I got out there, my friend Larry, do you want the quick version or you want this long version?
Whichever one you want to hit.
I'm gonna add this little part because it's another dub cassette. My friend Larry,
Please.
who's from Buffalo, he played in a band here called Envy. He was working at Revelation at the time. So when I got out to California, this was a time in hardcore when the bigger things were like 18 Visions, Throwdown, maybe Every Time I Die. So not exactly my perfect wheelhouse of hardcore. He gave me a tape. It was No Warnings, 7-inch, which I knew them and I had seen them before I moved. And on the other side was Carry On, A Life Less Plague, which if anyone is listening to this or whatever and doesn't know that, please check that record out. It's super amazing. And he gave me this tape and he said, I think you're going to really like it. He was right. And like, let's say a month later, I got a phone call from John LaCroix, which is funny because he's from 10 Yard Fight and he started Terror, but he was never officially in Terror. He was like, hey, I'm starting this band with 2 ex-members. Carry On had just broken up because the singer had broke Edge and I don't know, but that's what broke the band up. And he was like, I left a call on my answering machine because that's what you had back then. I'm starting this band with 2 members of Carry On. We heard you moved out here. We want you to sing. I was like, fuck, I don't want to do a band, but fuck, Carry On is great. I went and met them. John LaCroix never showed up to the first couple of practices, so he was out. But Nick and Todd, Nick, the drummer, who's still in Terror, Todd Jones, who's in Nails and was in Terror in the beginning. Let's just say I went into Nick's garage. They fucking played some shit for me. I was like floored. I was like, this is perfect. I'm in. Let's go. Your question was, did we always go 110%? Yes, we did. From the start, I think the 3 of us kind of like had a little talk. Like, I don't think we ever imagined it was going to be 20 years and 9 LPs and 8 billion tours and 7 million shows. But we did say to each other, all right, we've all done bands that have gotten somewhere and broken up. Let's give this band a chance. Let's say yes to everything. Let's try to tour. Let's try to make this happen. And we did. Ultimately, that, Todd was on board with that, but I think he realized quickly that, living in a van and touring that much wasn't for him, which, I love him and total respect. It's definitely a grind. He bowed out and here we are.
Yeah. I think the really interesting thing for me is in your transition of moving, it wasn't in your mind of like, oh, I'm going to do another thing. And, maybe like the love of the music was still there, obviously, but it wasn't like this, oh, I need to, the minute I get to California, I need to start a band.
It was the
And
opposite.
It was the opposite. And then all it took was like the serendipity of that is just, it is mind blowing, honestly.
It's funny too, because when I got out to the West Coast, 100 Demons called me. And this must have been when Bruce left the band, and they asked me if I was interested. And I said no, because I love them, and that would have been crazy. But I had already just moved to the West Coast. I was like, I can't. If they would have caught me before I left, maybe they could have pulled me in. But
Sure.
The story didn't go that way.
Yeah. So, yeah, like obviously, I feel like any band or band person that I bring on that is in a sizable act, like, has never imagined that their pursuit would have gone to that point. But it sounds like there was initial drive of like, okay, we've all been in bands that have like hit the ceiling but not broken through the ceiling. So let's just give it our honest efforts and see if it goes through that this time.
Yeah, I don't think we were considering the size of our band or the size of our old band. It was just the do it as a full-time thing,
Right.
Which at that point in 2002, it really wasn't a defined thing. What was a full-time hardcore? Like, we're a straight up hardcore band. What does that really mean? So I think it was just like, let's go for it and see what happens. Not we're going to get big, but let's just not get jobs that are going to take away from this. Let's do as much as we can with the band.
Right. And, I think when do you think the rhythm was found when it came to the aggressive touring schedule that Terror has? Because I'm sure now it's like you're looking, okay, we've put out this record, we need to do XYZ as far as festivals and international stuff. When do you feel like it wasn't just like, let's say yes to everything, and everything felt like you're building the car as it's going, if that makes sense? Like, when did you feel like you kind of was like, oh, like, I know how Terror operates 365 days of the year. In what year do you feel like you really like hit that stride?
This isn't going to be the answer you asked for. I feel like from 2002 when we started to 2009, it was just nonstop, no questions. We can't say no to anything. We got asked this, we have to do it. How could we turn this down? It's such a good opportunity. We have to go. We've never been to Japan. Go. Oh, we got asked to go back. We have to go. Mm-hmm. In 2009, which is right before Keepers of the Faith. So we got Jordan from No Warning in the band. Actually, we got David Wood from Down to Nothing first, and Jordan very soon after. I think we took a step back and said, we're touring too much. Like, not even like for the burning out the band, but our own burning out ourselves. We also said up to that point we had been doing a lot of kind of outside the box tours. Like we toured with Immure, we toured with Chimera, some bands like that. We kind of reeled it back and said, let's tour less, and let's also be more mindful of what makes us happy. And that was playing more with bands. We not a shot at either of those bands at all, but bands we click with, and we still will tour outside the box, but let's only do that a little bit, and let's keep ourselves happy touring with bands that we really love and connect with. And also doing tours like that, you end up playing with a lot of barricades and in venues that maybe aren't really built for or understand Terror. So we kind of made a conscious shift, and I don't want to say like we laid down the hammer, we're never going to play with a barricade, because we definitely still do. But that was the time we kind of said, it's starting to make us crazy. Let's smile a little more.
Totally. And that was definitely a subject that I wanted to hit on because I went through and listened to all 3 parts of the Pain into Power podcast trio with I know you did. I think part 2 was on Joe Hardcore's podcast, and then it's 185. It was just like a huge journey of conversation to talk about.
Was it cool? Because I haven't listened back to it.
It was cool, and honestly, like it put me onto 2 punk hardcore related podcasts that weren't even on my radar. So I'm going to be having to dive into a little of those. But I think
is one of those Richie's post America podcast?
I think he has part 1.
You should listen if you're not even anyone should listen to his interview with Aaron from Death Threat. It's one of the best podcasts I've ever heard in my life. It's
cool.
Had me smiling and crying at the same time. It's fucking awesome.
So I feel like there are good markers when I know I'm doing a good interview for the podcast. Anytime a guest says that's a good question, I know that's like my check mark for the episode. Anytime I get DMs from people after an episode drops of like, this episode made me cry or I was like in tears listening to it, I'm like, this is a great episode. So I'll have to check out that Death Threat one and see if I have a similar experience. But to go back to that, the reason I bring this up is you had mentioned that like Terror not necessarily got lost in the sauce, but it was like we are doing too many of the outside of the box touring. And you were saying that like it's not something you necessarily regret, but I think it's about like closing the valve of that. So there's still like a drip, but it's not like it's just pouring out. So like what do you think is like, aside from that, maybe having a bit of like a self-aware check of like, I think this is important, but we want to do the stuff that brings a smile to our face. Like what were some of like the conversations you were having with people who, you're doing like a super metal tour with like a mirror or something, but like, do you feel like that was an instrumental piece for Terror's legacy as far as bringing people from that world into the hardcore scene?
Well, one of the great things about doing tours like that happened consistently, and it still does happen. And we just toured with Kubla Khan. They're kind of in that Amur world, and they had a great draw, so they had a lot of people at our shows that were maybe not even familiar with Terror. And I would assume this happened again. Lots of times, let's say we did a tour with Amur. A year later, we'll come back to someone will walk up to me with a shaved head and a Judd shirt. And he would say to me, "Man, you might not believe this, but I came to see you last year with Amur and I had never seen or heard anything like you guys. I went and got your record, the lyrics, blah, blah, blah." Basically, he didn't say this, but look at me now. Now I'm like a fucking transformed hardcore kid. And I can relate to that because I was going to punk shows and it didn't fully connect with me. And as soon as I saw what I call more straight up hardcore, it really sucked me in and changed my life. So that was one of the great parts about it. The other things that I touched on earlier were not so great, but playing to a new audience, maybe you think you want to explain your songs a little bit more and give these people kind of an inside scoop to what you're about. Because I think hardcore is always more than music, definitely more than mosh pits and stage dives. It's about the lyrics and the message and the community and the taking care of each other and stuff like that. So if we were to play to a Chimera crowd and just got up there and just said, "Yo, fuck it up" over and over and just played our songs into mosh parts, it might not be the same connection as if, I take the time to explain a few things about the band. And that was a beautiful thing. And still, I'm always about that.
Yeah, a very early season 2 podcast I did was with Brian from Knocked Loose, and Knocked Loose is one of those bands that has played the super hardcore route or tours, and then kind of the more mixed bill. Like they'll go on tour with Gojira, but Brian said that like a big thing that he's learned is just like how he like navigates like a hardcore only show versus like a show that like, okay, everyone put their hands up. Like if you're doing that at like a This Is Hardcore, people are like, what do you mean you put my hands up, But like, there are certain shows. So he was essentially talking about like how to talk to different crowds and different audiences, and that was like a very valuable tool to him. I'm going to use this as a bit of a segue as well. Another band that I know that has done a lot of mixed bill kind of touring and whatnot is Stick to Your Guns. And we just had Jesse on the show, and you came up in our episode in the sense of like, because something that I noticed as like seeing so many live videos of Terror is that there were like periods of time where you would rock like the Buffalo like jersey for like, it felt like a year plus. And then there was a time where it was like Stick to Your Guns, just the Stick to Your Guns shirt was on you at all times for multiple tours. And so I was talking to him about that because Stick to Your Guns is a very foundational hardcore band for me growing up, but they were kind of given a hand of like, oh, well, Stick to Your Guns has singing and they're not hardcore and things like that. And Jesse was saying, I think Scott wore that shirt so many times out of spite to all the people that were talking shit about us. So I kind of wanted to see if that was true, if there was a deeper meaning to that or anything you wanted to add there.
I wear the same thing a lot because when you go on tour and you sweat every night, if you sweat into your actual clothes you wear, you get stinky.
Yeah. You have to sacrifice something for
show clothes.
The run. Yeah.
And if they can take a beating and they fit you good, then I go with it for a while. But to the Stick to Your Guns thing, I hope Jesse's right. I hope I did do it out of spite. That never like crossed my mind. I wore Stick to Your Guns stuff and will continue to, because not only are they amazing people, but they're a fucking great band. And, Gorilla Biscuits, Verbal Assault, some of the greatest hardcore bands in the world sing. Dag Nasty. I love singing. No one needs a idiot like me screaming at them over and over and over. Get someone with some actual vocal talent.
Pipes. Yeah.
But hardcore kids are very, very judgmental, and I'm sure every band gets it, for better or for worse. And if people, people can say what they want, but I love Stick to Your Guns.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to use that into a bit of a segment portion of the interview before we keep going. So this is corny core. So I want to hit you with some hardcore related terms or isms or just things that would happen at a regular show. And you tell me the level of corniness and how we can theoretically fix that if it is too corny.
Do you do this all the time?
No, this is tailored just for you.
Okay, 1 is not corny, 10 is mad corny.
Okay,
is that
cool?
Okay.
I appreciate you setting the scales, because I was like, how are we going to measure this? But 0 is not corny, and it's not even something on anyone's radar. 10 is there's a corny wazoo problem, and we need to address it.
I do like this a lot, but there's going to be some things that I say 10 do, and then person listening is going to be like, but I do that, so I'm going to look like a dick, but...
I will. There's only 5 here, but feel free at the end if there's any thing that I missed here as far as things you want to address as 10 out of 10 corny.
Don't get me started.
The term mosh retirement, or people saying, "Oh, I might have to come out of mosh retirement." Is that really corny?
If you have fucking moshed for 20 plus years, you can go into retirement. If not, shut the fuck up.
Hard agree.
But I'd give that a strong 3. It's not that corny. It's just not true.
Yeah, it's incorrect, but it's not super corny. I feel like that's a fair rating.
20.
I hear it from people that I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen you mosh.
All right, I like that. You're a bad person. You're bad. You're gonna get me going, and then I'm gonna look like a dick. But honestly, if you haven't put in 20 years of hard moshing, you can't retire yet. You just quit. You dropped out of moshing.
You didn't even sign up.
Right.
Who, before we move on to the next one, who in your world that you know deserves
Me.
A severance package of mosh retirement?
Me.
You?
Scott
Okay.
Vogel. Yes.
Scott
absolutely.
Vogel.
Absolutely. I also deserve workman's compensation because my body is destroyed.
It's just Scott Vogel sitting in the mosh retirement housing, and there's no one there. And he's like, I deserve to be here by myself.
Sometimes,
Okay.
Currently, sometimes Tara will be at a show, and I'll want to go in the pit, and I'll see Martine like, no. He's like, you're gonna get hurt. We need you on stage. We don't need you at the hospital.
I love Martine just being like, no. Okay. We kind of hit on this a little bit with the stick to your guns mention. Deciding what bands who are and aren't hardcore.
I'm guilty of this. This is what got me into internet drama with the Ghost Inside. This has got to be a 0 because I do it.
Okay.
I'm just joking. Honestly,
which side of the coin were you on the Ghost? We don't have to air the beef or the drama if you don't want to.
I said they weren't a hardcore band, and then it became this. It was on stage. I said this, so at least I did it on stage. I wasn't like doing it. If you're gonna talk shit, you might as well do it on stage. I mean, this is major water under the bridge many years ago.
Sure.
And also, honestly, that's that. So I'm going to go with it's pretty high up because it's so embarrassing. I'm sitting up there as like, at the time I was probably like 43 years old, judging these people and telling them they're not a hardcore band. Please shut up, Mr. Vogel. That's about a 7, but I still do it. How can you not?
Yeah. It's too easy to pass up, and I'm guilty of this myself. But I think ultimately, I really enjoyed on the 3-part podcast where you guys were, one of the last things you were hitting on was like what actually makes a hardcore band, and it was like, well, it's got to be. I had Lumpy from Sanction on the podcast, and we were talking about like hardcore kids who make metalcore bands are still hardcore bands, but like metalcore kids who make metalcore, that's its own thing. And then there's metalcore kids who make hardcore bands, and he was like, that shit sucks. So
I really like what Richie said. He broke it down to like your mental state. And if anyone wants to know, in retrospect, I have this post on my Instagram that someone made this image of something I must have said in a fanzine, and it's old because I talk about phone bills, but it's a great summary of what I think a hardcore kid is, I guess.
I think I have that quote here.
It's like,
Is it the one with the person stage diving at the bottom? Is that
yes. That's a great thing.
Do you mind if I read that, or is that going to derail our conversation?
No, that's great.
Okay. You know what? I'm not going to, because I have it saved for something towards the end of the interview.
Oh, okay.
So we'll
come back to that.
We'll come back to that.
But yeah, what I was saying in Joe Hardcore kind of shot down, but I think he took it as, he said like Dave Grohl, but I was saying if any current hardcore kid, so you're an active part of the scene, you support the scene, you believe in the scene, you're there for the scene. If you go and make music, then to me it's hardcore because a hardcore kid is making it. Now,
Right.
I also said, if you're playing jazz or something, that's a little bit outside the box, but maybe that isn't a foolproof definition. But if a hardcore kid makes music, then to me it's hardcore, as opposed to, like you were saying, I think you were saying metalcore kids playing hardcore isn't hardcore. But in this day and age, it's such a fine line because
Right.
Buried Alive, I mean, this isn't this day and age, but Buried Alive 20 years ago definitely made metalcore, but we were all hardcore kids going to every hardcore show, loving hardcore. So is that to say All Out War is not a hardcore band?
Yeah, I do think that, to me, I look at hardcore as it is its own genre, but I almost think it's more of like not an umbrella term, because it sounds like I'm devaluing it, but like I really think that a band like that plays super metallic or metalcore or even like death metal as stuff, when you look at all the members of the band, it's like all these kids like grew up on, Hatebreed, Stick to Your Guns, whatever era that they kind of fall into. And so I think it's really cool to be able to have hardcore fests that have representation of all those genres, but they all come from the same place, if that makes sense.
Right. And I think back to also, Despair would play fests with the Get Up Kids and Coalesce. Completely different.
Right.
Maybe Despair somewhere in the middle, but I think that's great. Goes back to my argument. Hardcore kids making music can sound beautiful like the Get Up Kids, or like crazy like turning my fucking garbage disposal on, like something like Coalesce. But it's still hardcore, I guess.
You ready for another corny?
Yeah. So
term?
we got 7. No.
We gave 3 to Mosh Retirement, 7 for deciding what's hardcore or not.
Okay.
What would you give for the term Eurocore?
I'll give that a 6. And just to be honest, Europe is an amazing place for hardcore, has amazing bands and amazing people. And I'm going there on Wednesday and I can't wait. So when people, there is some things about Europe and European hardcore that you can laugh at, but look at the fucking America. you can't find things to fucking laugh at over here.
Right.
So, I would think the way you're asking me, it's used as a derogatory term.
Derogatory in a light way. I think it's a way to explain how the music sounds, but I don't agree that is like I listening to Desolated or not Whispers, Worst Out, like any of those bands. I don't think that I feel like they play in such a similar lane than a lot of American bands. No one's coming up and saying, "Oh, this sounds like Canada core" or anything like that. Like it's the same genre of music, but it might just have a slight accent. I don't know. I've heard that from some Europeans that I've had on the podcast, and they're like, "This shit is like the most demeaning thing of like putting us in a box versus like expanding us to the overall North American."
I'll give it a 6, but I will say True Blue, World Collapse, Kickback, Dead Stop, No Turning Back, Risk It, Born from Pain. There's all the bands in the UK, Knuckle Dust. There's so much good hardcore coming from, and that has come from Europe. So I don't know if I've ever said Eurocore in my life. I'd just say, they're a great band from Germany or European hardcore, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand how someone has said that. If it was me, I would probably put it more in an 8 or 9. But yeah, that's where I would do. Okay, stage potatoes, people that just exist on stage when maybe they don't need to be on the stage for a set. How corny is that to you?
That shit can suck at times. That can be like a strong 8. It's not terrible, but get in the fucking pit. We need people in the pit. We don't need people on stage.
Right.
What the fuck are you doing? I mean, as a person that's certified, able to retire from the pit, when I would go to a show when I was like from age 16 to 30, I was loving my time in the pit. I mean, yeah, there's really no reason to be up there for the most part.
I feel like there's been too many times as someone that films shows, in addition to doing this podcast, like that to me makes sense. If I'm like on stage to get a certain vantage point where I can see the pit and the band and zoom in and out. But some shows have large stages where it's like, yeah, a couple people standing on stage is kind of whatever. But like when Terror played Dickens in Calgary, it's like there's not a lot of space for people just to hang out. So
was there people hanging out?
There was people hanging out more like off the stages, so there was at least that. I think it's more in the fest kind of scenarios where people will like, oh, this is a homie of a homie's band. So it's not even a direct connection, but for people who are like, working the event to be, someone's trying to get an XLR cable and someone's standing on it, it just becomes a whole thing.
I mean, I still do that too, so I get it. But my real answer would be like, get in the pit and represent. Yes. At least go up front. Can we, like the horseshoe? That's a 10. What the fuck are you doing? What is that?
The horseshoe's a 10?
But that's a 50. It's so stupid. I mean, maybe hardcore's own fault because maybe you don't want to stand there and have some dude punch you in the back of your head. That's not cool. That's a 10. It's going
But
out.
I think the building the layer from the stage outwards, if people are like shoulder to shoulder, like the people that are getting deliberately punched or accidentally punched, if you want to call it that, are just on the outskirts of the pit. If we build a sea of people, like the horseshoe or the circle will just be pushed back.
A great show is packed up, diving, singing, pitting. Everyone not knowing they're trying to hurt someone. People might get hurt, but not deliberately hurt.
Right. Well, it was funny because you saying horseshoe was my 5th option as well.
10,
but,
20.
50 out of 10.
I've got one. Show curated. You booked a hardcore show. What is curated? Did I lose you?
Are you asking me?
No, I know what it is, but why isn't it? It's the term. It blows my mind. You called some bands up and got them to your city. You booked a show.
Oh, you're I'm not sure what you're actually asking me.
I'm saying when people put on a flyer or they refer to themselves as curating a show.
Oh, like a promoter or something like that?
Turning a show
booking
into a fucking art event. It's a fucking hardcore show. You booked it.
Right.
You didn't curate it.
Right.
You don't agree with me.
No, okay, I'm understanding now. So you're saying someone who says they've curated a show.
It happens.
I've never personally seen that.
You will now. Now that it's planted in your head, you will see it.
Wait. Do you mean that when it says blah, blah, blah presents, is that the same thing?
Yes.
Or the word?
Let's say Scott presents these people. Curated by Scott. This is a thing that is said very often now.
Okay. So what do you give that out of 10?
I mean, it's not a big deal. It's a 5, but it's just like, what? Curated? This isn't an art gallery.
I'll have to send you the first time I see curated on a hardcore flyer. Like,
Okay.
That sounds corny to me. to me there's no rating set because I haven't seen it, but I might see it and just see it in the context and be like, oh, this is a 10 out of 10.
You'll see it.
But I'll use this a segue into one of the things that I thought would be fun for us to hit on, because we're talking about things that are corny, not necessarily problems in hardcore, but things that are annoyances or grievances or anything like that. If you had a hardcore genie lamp, you rub it, genie pops out, and he's like, Scott, I can grant you 3 wishes when it comes to hardcore. What would your wishes, as far as things that you would wish to change, or you could be super selfish as far as like things for terror is concerned? What would you utilize those?
Okay. To devour the horseshoe, instead of me having to beg people to move up, the back of the club has like some sort of like snowplow thing where I can just press a button and they are not, they're not like trampled, but they're slowly.
It's like the spike wall.
It's
that kind of like comes
pushed
forward.
Up. That's installed in every venue.
Yes. Okay. That's a great choice. So essentially there's a way to adjust the size of every venue based off how many people are actually there.
It's not even that, because you can play a sold out packed show, but the people will still
horseshoe it.
Yes.
Okay. So it's about containing the attendees to the pit area.
Bring them to the front of the stage.
I like it. it.
We create we eliminate all van drives. You're in Calgary, you snap your fingers, you're in fucking Winnipeg.
So Star Trek transportation
and
venue to venue, or city to city.
I do not want to fly. Flying could be worse than an 8-hour van drive. You got to get there early, delayed, problems with your baggage. Does your bag show up? You got to get it. Flying is hell. Driving in a van like 8 hours a day is hell. Elimination. Star Trek.
This is super innovative. Not like any of these things are actually going to be implemented. But
that's what you
living
think.
In the fantasy world, that's a great idea to be like, hey, thanks for booking the show, and then you're transported.
It was awesome to see
the full day to hang out.
Yes.
Okay, quick question on this fantasy. Do you think that would accelerate the hardcore economy as far as people would just see a flyer and then they could just snap their fingers and go wherever in the world? They buy the ticket and they can.
This is bands only.
Oh, this is a bands only technology. Okay.
If you're just going to a show, you have to sell, like, you have
to fly.
I drive to shows all the time. Rochester, Syracuse, Cleveland. That's part of it. I think that's probably in the little thing you may read at some point. Road trips. Road trips are a huge lost art. I'm sure they still happen, but not as much as they should. But for a band that has to do like 30 days in a row, click your way around.
I think we don't open that up to the masses just yet. We keep that as a touring band exclusive. Okay.
Okay, you want the third?
You have gone over my expectations for this answer, so I'm excited for this third one. Everything so far has been very selfless. It's all about everyone else, not just Scott or Terror.
For every band that posts on Instagram that their show was sold out, they have to put under that something actually that happened at the show that was semi cool. It seems like hardcore has gotten to the point where the only thing that matters at your show is it's sold out. The show was sold out, but I also heard the singer of the local band say something that was really important, or I fucking hated it. Even if you fucking hate it, can there be something more to a show than people paid to come see your band?
That requirement is a really good idea, because I totally agree. I love seeing all my friends fucking go out on the road and are killing it and doing all these things. I do think that there is because of the success of a lot of bands, it becomes like this warped reality or expectation when people are starting a brand new band. It's like, oh, we need to get to this level. That's why I always say like Tsunami is like a unicorn band. Like it is not the standard to like put out a demo, have it blow up, and then you're like traveling all over the world. Like they are a siloed scenario. It's great for them. I'm stoked. Tons of great friends of mine, but that is not the norm. The norm is the bands like Knock Loose that like just bled until
they grinded for sure
and grind and like doing all those things. Does the requirement to do that change over time? Sure. But I think it's like hard work can't be ignored by record labels. It can't be ignored by other cool bands that are like, oh, like we have to bring out this band because they're just hitting the road all the time. And I feel like the stripes of that need to be earned. No matter the era. You could be listening to this in 2027, but I think the same things still apply.
I just think the reason why I say this is this is supposed to be about thinking in a community and sharing and expression. It's not about ticket sales. It's not about that you filled a room with people. So great. Yeah, that's great. The Terror is guilty of this too. Wow, we sold out the show. We're fucking huge. We're amazing. Can there be something about the things I just mentioned? What is more important? That you sold out a room and, you know, I was going to say other rude things about stuff I see, but I'll let it go. I just think there should be something more than sold out.
Right.
Maybe if your biggest concern is that you sold out, maybe you've sold out.
Ooh, interesting. I like that.
I do too. I've been working on that all week.
And now we got it, contained in the podcast, so now we just have to clip it. Man, I'm moved by that, Scott. Truly.
So you said the gauge for a good podcast is if you get told a great question. Well, if I move the podcaster, great answer.
Great. Made up for all the cat swiping the phone away, balancing of the scales.
He's here. He's calm.
He's tempted. So something that I have noticed, I've seen Terror 3 times based off when you guys were doing your little Western Canada stint. But I've seen like a plethora of different videos that have been documented over the years. And something that I've noticed for you is that like you are such a champion of people who are grabbing the mic from you during a song, and you're like, you do the song. So was that something that like you were always doing, or just like, I am just tired of singing, someone else can do this part? When did that like become just a thing or a mantra of yours, and like how do you think that affects people?
To the best of my recollection, this is could be wrong, but I think, when you do the Terror songs 10 years in a row, you get to the point where you're okay with other people doing it. And we would at time have people that come on tour with us for a couple years at a time. I think those were the first people that I would say, yo, sing this part of the song every night. You're there. So, you know, I would give them the mic. I really think this could snowball that where you're in the crowd and you see me giving the mic to this person that you don't know who he is. I know that he's like living in our van and part of our thing. Oh, he just took it. Now I took it. You know, people have always had like guests on stage and stuff, but maybe Terror would be, because lots of bands do this now where lots of people are singing. Maybe we're the first to me really pass the mic around to everyone. Please take it. It has to do with we've toured for 20 years. Please give me a break. And also, like, when we had these like people with us, I'll say roadies, that's what they were, or merch guys or whatever. See them, and some of them went on to start great bands. Also, another thing that I always did, I would always look for females up front singing, and I would literally pull them on stage and give them the mic. A lot of times, you know, even dudes, a lot of times, if I saw someone that knew the words and maybe whether it's a male or a female, they felt like they couldn't sing in a band, I would, like, you know, not violently, but pull them on stage, put the mic in their hand. They would, you know, face them towards the crowd and be like, do it. And then they would do it.
Right.
And, you know, that's something that I'll still do, but, you know, I've done that a million times, and it's more so like, I get to do this every night. I see that you know the words. Fucking take it. Go for it. And
I like it's so interesting to me because it's like it's happening in like a matter of seconds, and you're like, I don't need context from you whether you've ever screamed in a microphone before, if you've played in bands, like, you clearly know the words, you just do it. And whether, because I have seen like people outside of the hardcore space, like, it was always kind of a weird thing where it's like, oh, like, you know, here's this video of this crazy rock band and they bring this dude on stage to like play a song, but it's like, I'm sure that there's like a bit of a vetting process, like, oh, you know, we're playing to 20,000 people, we don't want you to fuck up. But there's like, it's happening in the split second of like, you know the words, I have no idea what you sound like because there's a million sound waves and just different things happening, but I am going to champion you, place it in your hand, and like kind of not even peer pressure, but just like, I'm going to just put you in that and see what you do with it. Because I'm sure, like, you know, sometimes you've probably done that and some people are like kind of shy, but some people might just be overtaken by adrenaline and fucking kill it. And then that could be the next person in big band that's going and doing things. Like, you never know. And I think it's, I've admired that you have done that so often that you have.
Thank you. It can be amazing. Usually, you know, it's somewhere in the middle. Sometimes I turn around in my band, I'm like, whoa, this fucking person's got it. Sometimes it can go very wrong. I misread that they knew the words.
Sure.
They didn't know the words. Their timing is terrible, or they actually do know, but they're so maybe nervous, they come in at the wrong time. It can go very wrong, but a great thing about Terror is we have two other microphones, and Martine and Mr. Linkovich sing a ton. So if it goes astray, they can kind of pull it back in.
Yeah, because obviously the ratio is probably more of like, yeah, you know, it passes. But I'm sure there's been times you're like, oh no. But, you know, on the flip side of the coin, that person that from your super experienced perspective is like, oh, they kind of fucked this up. They might just be like, that was the greatest night of my life. Scott Vogel like handed me the microphone, like this crazy thing. So it's like, I think it's just so, again, like I'm really tune your own horn here, but like, I really think it's cool that you have not, like, you're not concerned about like the show. Like, you are okay with something either going amazing or super shitty, but you don't think that that is going to jeopardize the entire Terror set.
No, I would. I mean, it's a hardcore show. It doesn't have to be it can be dirty and ugly, and that we can be off time, and someone could fuck up that song, and we still fuck up our songs, and we're a pretty professional for a hardcore band, but we never got to that point where it was, this has to go. We're not that professional.
Mm-hmm. Couple other Terror questions. And I always ask this question to any band that has like a really big discography, like a large amount of body of work behind them.
We fucking got that.
Yes, you do. Excluding Pain into Power, because, I feel like it's still, still like people are chewing on it. So let's exclude that. People are marinating on it. That's a good use of the word. Excluding that, what is the most underrated Terror song, and what is the most overrated Terror song? From your opinion.
It's hard to go with the underrated because there's so many we don't play. So I would say the song Shattered is a song that I think is a 10 out of 10, but we never really gave it its proper due. So I think people that know it because of the lyrical content connect with it. But if you're not like really, really Terror diehard, it could just be a album song that you never really heard, because we've only played it live a couple times ever. So I'm going to go with that's the underrated one. Overrated Terror song. So this would be one that people want to hear, but I think is not that great.
Or one that you're just like tired of playing, or like vocally it's just doesn't really mean the same to you. Because I've asked, so like I mentioned, I've done a multitude of different Comeback Kid episodes. I've asked this question to all the different whether it's Stu, who plays guitar, or Andrew, who does vocals, but they gave totally separate answers based off, this song's a little boring to play in guitar, or this song doesn't mean the same to me lyrically. So
okay, maybe Spit My Rage. I think it's ripping. The verse, chorus, and the breakdown is amazing. Total Slayer ripoff, but it goes for too long, and it's just like Spit My Rage in your face. Spit My Rage. That's a great part. Anyone that wants to do guest vocals to the end of that, come and get it, because I want to get away from it. I would say
Okay, so Shattered and Spit My Rage, as far as the underrated, overrated. Good picks. So like I was mentioning at the top of the episode, as far as the first time I saw you guys, was when you did the Western Canada, kind of like Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, and friend of the show, GFK. Can I tell you a little bit of context from my lens about what those shows were to me?
Sure.
So, Scoped Exposure, as far as this thing that I created, like really just started. It was just me trying to like figure it out, and like something that I was doing to give back to my scene and filming bands. Like, this podcast didn't even exist yet. And I wanted to do like a 1-year anniversary of some kind of local show, nothing crazy, just like some friends. I had never put on a show in my life, so I was like, had no idea what I was doing. JFK got wind of, me wanting to do some kind of anniversary thing, and then he mentioned, hey, I'm doing this Terror show. If you want to just like, put, a little thing at the bottom here. And I was like, just over the moon, because I was like, okay, I wanted to do like maybe a 5-band thing, but now there's like 2 nights, and then Vancouver got added. So I was like, well, if my name's on the poster, I feel like I should be at those shows and filming those shows. So getting to like secretly like kind of follow you guys unintentionally and like film all these different shows. And the Calgary set specifically is like, it's definitely in the top 5 sets on our YouTube channel, as far as like, we wanted to make sure we, held, packed no punches. We wanted to do the multicam, we didn't do the live audio. And, so that was like very special to me, in just seeing like how this thing was growing. And then, we're coming up on year 5 now, when it comes to Scope Exposure. We have an anniversary fest that is going to be headlined by Strife, Tsunami, and Scowl, and a multitude of other bands. So like, I really attribute that stretch of shows, like whether I just got like stapled on at the very end or not, to be super like opening my mind to like how dope hardcore, like how dope things can be if you like really put your mind to it when it comes to hardcore. So when it comes to that series of shows, is there anything that you remember as far as like just any like cool takeaways? Because outside of maybe Eastern Canada, like you guys haven't been back here since then. So how were those shows, and like working with JFK, obviously friend of the show. I just wanted to give a little bit of that context before I asked you that question about how those shows went through your eyes.
Thank you for the nice words. I'm glad we could be a part of your journey into the insanity. If you don't mind, if I change the mood, I'm going to tell a funny story, if that's cool.
Please tell a funny story.
I think it was in Edmonton after the show. JFK and there's members of Terror that like to go out after the show. I am not one of these people. I very, very, very rarely do. And I remember it was Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. Is that correct?
Edmonton before Calgary, but yes, those three.
Okay, so I think it was Edmonton, but maybe it was Calgary. So JFK lined up this thing where we were going to this like dance club, almost like a rave or something. And it was downstairs in this club. It was walking distance from our show. And everyone was all psyched. And I must have probably had some drinks, because that's the only way you'll get me to go out. But I just remember, all right, I'm going out. We're going to hang out. We're going to this thing. I remember we all walked in. We all went downstairs. I looked around. I left before a minute was up. I was like, what am I doing here? No fucking way. I'm out of here. And I took off and probably went back to the hotel or whatever. But I just remembered, like, lesson learned. I do not belong at raves.
I just imagine you walking in and you're like, yep, nope, let's just turn this car around.
I think I was in there for less than a minute. From the time we got to where we were going to be, and I could be like, this is it? Nope. Goodbye. Just left.
Nope.
I know I didn't give you the hardcore energy, the greatness of the shows, but that was the first thing that came to my head.
No, I appreciate you telling that story, because there are very few instances where you walk into a space where you're like, this is not where I'm supposed to be, and it's time to exit this. I've done that whether it's like a restaurant or like you walk into like a shitty motel and you're like, oh God,
what did I do?
No, let's turn this around. Were there any, since we're on the topic of there is no way that I'm going to entertain this for more than a minute, were there any shows or stories from the road that you had a very similar experience, like you just mentioned?
No, I don't think we've ever pulled up to a place and it was like the guy doing the show had like a swastika tattoo, so we got back in the van and left. I don't think anything like that's ever happened. And we can pretty much go with the flow. We've played like beautiful rooms where I'm like, we shouldn't be here. And we've played like places where the power is like an extension cord thrown over being, stealing the power from the store next door. We can kind of go with the flow with anything.
Wait. Is that a true story?
Yeah, I can remember we played in Atlanta once, and the power from it is like, somehow someone went into the next door business. I think it was like a strip mall.
Sure.
And they plugged in extension cords and threw them over the wall or somehow under the wall.
Hilarious.
Stuff like,
I know there's like, some businesses, sometimes you'll find like a random outlet on the outside of the building. And that's what I imagine is just like, let's just plug this in here and just run, a PA system and guitar amps and all that.
Corny factor. When you're on tour with a band and the guitar player is like playing his guitar, like guitar leads for hours backstage, or the drummer is like, you can warm up, but like all day, like, oh, come on.
What is that corny level out of 10 for you?
I mean, it's not corny. It's annoying. It's actually smart. It's actually like taking your job seriously, but
sure,
it's annoying.
What's the max time when it comes to warming up for a set for you? And that could be drummers doing the thing. I think this is my wife coming home, so I'm gonna let her come out.
10 minutes.
10 minutes? There she goes. 10 minutes for drum warms up, guitar stuff. What are your thoughts on stretching before a show?
Necessary for some.
Necessary for some.
Probably a good idea if you're going to go the fuck off. If you stretch, though, you better put those fucking limbs to use.
Right. Yeah. If I see you stretching, I should see you swinging, when the show starts. Let's talk lyrics a little bit, Scott. Do lyrics need to rhyme when it comes to hardcore music?
No, because look at the first Chain of Strength 7-inch. It's perfect, and I believe it doesn't rhyme.
There's no rhymes at all.
Maybe the Turning Point LP doesn't. No, it rhymes. I just went through some of it.
Did you just mouth part of a song just to check?
They say it's always darkest before the dawn. It may look bad now, but I'm holding on to what I have and what I've earned. I refuse to let that burn. Definitely rhymes. Maybe they have a song that doesn't rhyme. I think. Yeah, the Chain of Strength first 7-inch, I think, doesn't rhyme. Rhyming's good though to keep people. It's easier to learn the words so they can sing along. So I can pull you on stage and give you the mic.
Right. It's like rhyming. On one hand, it's just it sounds good because it's I think it sounds good, but it's also like it's connecting those sentences together.
Keeps the flow going. Totally. Interesting. Maybe I'll try to write a song that doesn't rhyme.
I'm giving you some homework for some future Terror stuff now. Like, do you always like everything in Terror for you needs to rhyme, or is there stuff where you're like, I think the hack for me when I'm writing lyrics is I have like a website where I'll do like there's like I'll plug in the word, and then that word might help inspire, and then sometimes I'll even go like near rhymes, so it's like roughly. I don't know if you have a similar practice.
I'm on the exact same page. It doesn't have to exactly rhyme, but if it rolls off the tongue and it feels right and it's close enough, go with it.
Right. Speaking, because I really think that lyrics to a song help take it from like the cool demo, that it sounds to like, oh, this is like, it could take something from here to here. So what lyrics off of the new record, we'll use that as the main focus, do you feel like really took the song from like, oh yeah, this is a cool Terror-esque song to like, oh, this is like something really special on the album?
The first two that come to mind are Outside the Lies, which is like track 4, and then the last song, Prepare for the Worst. they're both musically pretty powerful, but pretty typical. I don't want to say generic. They're typical Terror songs. I think when you put the vocal cadence on top of them and combining with what the lyrics are actually saying, then they become much more powerful.
Got you. Is there annoying? You know, we've talked about this corny aspects or different things or grievances. Is there annoyance for you as far as maybe hardcore, like not being as serious as maybe some of the foundational bands and records, as far as like, oh, I'm just writing like a series of diss tracks essentially, or are you kind of like they have their time and place for both of those things?
Going back to like what I was saying about the sold out thing, I just hope I can't judge every band. I just hope that people are trying to write lyrics that are important and impactful and thought provoking or just therapeutic for themselves. Yeah, I just hope that people are just still trying to keep it either an expression of themselves or a way to communicate and think with others or a way to enlighten others. You know, you can have songs about hating the person that fucked you over. That's important too. But I hope that it's about using your head, your heart, helping the community that you're a part of, and not just reduced to sick mosh pits and, you know, what labels after you and how many people you draw and stuff like that.
Right. Speaking of, you know, bands, you know, you're like, I can't judge every band, but like, I feel like you are someone that has your ear and eye to the ground when it comes to a lot of like up and coming stuff. Do you want to shout out 5 bands that have either caught your eye or ear that you're really excited about that have come out in the last couple of years?
Sure. This is like a band this is an example of where I say I can't judge every band. That band Spy I think they're from the Bay. I don't know the people at all. I don't really know their lyrics, but I've heard their band. I don't know their mindset. I don't know if they're straight edge. I don't know anything about them except I fucking heard the band and the energy was unbelievable. I saw some live clips. They're a band that I think is really fucking powerful, but you know, I don't know their mindset. I'm hoping for the best. If I ever meet them, I hope they're cool as shit and have good head on their shoulders. But from a musical standpoint, they're super powerful.
I only know Cole, who drums in Spy and also Scowl. He's the only member that I know of. Spy is a band that I think has a healthy amount of like guitar feedback. As a guitar player myself, it's just like it's enough where you're like, ooh, like, you know, once you have that song cranked on full blast, like it's just so like deafening, and then their music kicks in. So more bands, I think, need to lean into that like overbearing guitar feedback. Yeah, great pick for sure.
Okay, we just toured with Pain of Truth, and awesome people, very fun to tour with, made me laugh the whole time. Awesome energy, and they, for like what you were saying about Tsunami, they have a split out in a comp song, and we went all over the country with them, and they've got people that are really into them everywhere we went, and their energy's great. So Pain of Truth is the real deal. I said something on stage, I not musically, but I equated them somehow I compared them and their vibe and their energy and the people to Death Threat, who's one of my favorite bands ever musically and as people. So that was like a huge compliment I could pay to them. So they just gave me that vibe, the way they just carried themselves.
I have a friend that has compared them to the next Hatebreed. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm sticking with Death Threat.
Okay. It's not my take. They said it on the podcast. I was like, that's a bold statement. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but
that's big shoes to fill.
Big shoes. But I would say that Pain of Truth is an album of way, like the fact that they are dominating off of an EP, a split, and one song on a comp. All it takes is one great record to like actually just for true world domination for any band, honestly.
Okay, my next pick is going to be a blender. So moving back to Buffalo, there's Violent Way, Exhibition, and Smash and Grab. Those are three younger Buffalo bands. I would say Violent Way is like a oi skinhead band. Exhibition's kind of like thrashy, like kind of take offense-ish, but maybe not that thrashy, but in that ballpark. And Smash and Grab's kind of more New York, Killing Time-ish type hardcore. But the reason I put them all together is it's basically like 12 dudes that are in all the bands. And they're all cool, really cool bands, really cool people. And I want to give all them some shine. So that's 3. Got 2 more.
Yeah. I like it's essentially the same members kind of all mismatched into different bands, so they can be under one thing.
Is Dare, are they too old for this conversation?
That's an interesting question. I feel like Dare might be, because I saw Dare before the Rev acquisition and all that, and I was like, this band is going to be something awesome. So I feel like they might be out of the pickings.
Okay, I love Dare, but let's move on. Never Ending Game.
Yep. I feel like Never Ending Game's a little bit more in line with that.
Okay, we're going with them. On the tour we just did, they played 2 of the shows. They're super powerful, and I think they got they don't like go off on stage, but they just have a really cool presence. And recorded, they're like a hard hitting, very hard hitting.
Can I tell you a funny Never Ending Game ism?
Sure.
So
I don't know what that means, but yes.
Okay, so Never Ending Game is headlining a fest in Toronto at the top of September called Hold Your Ground Fest, being put on by Jessa. Shout out to Jessa.
I wanted Buried Alive to play that, but Terror's out of town. So go ahead.
So Never Ending Game is closing out the second day. My band is called Endgame, and we're opening the first day. So Endgame,
polar opposites.
It's literally the bookends.
Okay.
And I think I DM'd them, and they're like, "Does the game really ever end?" I'm like, "You're totally right."
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to come up with a 5th here.
Make it count.
I'm going state by state. I got it.
Hit me.
From the Bay, No Right. Is it No Right or No Rights?
No Right. Big friends of the show and of Scoped Exposure. They played our 2-year anniversary fest with Dare, ironically.
I think they're great. Very good live. Just an awesome band. I think they need more love, so I'm giving them as much love as possible.
I think they're severely underrated. I'm a big fan of Toshio, their guitar player, who's recorded all of the dope Bay bands that are popping up right now. Big fan of Sierra and what she does. Yeah, I feel like they are the sleeping giant, if anything, of the Bay. Sleeping giant as a term, not sleeping giant the band.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, Scott. So as we kind of end towards the close, obviously a new record just came out. What is the one thing that you hope that fans of Terror for all albums, or maybe this is the first one they're hearing? What is the one thing that you want people to take away from this record?
That we're still putting out music that is hitting you in the face like a sledgehammer.
Right.
B, that if you take the time to read the lyrics, that they're still important. And I think the artwork is super cool. I mean, I think the record is exactly what we set out to do. I have like zero complaints. So I hope people put it on and get smashed in the face by the music and can relate to the lyrics. And if they don't, then maybe Terror isn't for them, which is fine. But I don't think we could have done anything differently to achieve the set out goal.
Mm-hmm. Wonderfully said. 2 more questions. The second is this hardcore is fill in the blank quote that you said it in a zine, which do you remember which zine it was? Because I feel bad.
No,
that this
I have
thing,
no
I'm sure,
idea.
has circulated so many times, and this person's like not getting tagged or anything.
I can only put together that it's very old because I say something about your phone bill, which is so before cell phones. I also mentioned something about animals aren't ours to eat. I eat meat now, so we'll get that out of the way. So it was back. But I mean, I think a beautiful thing about hardcore is that it's steered many people to be vegetarian, because I think that's wonderful.
Totally.
But I have no idea where it came from. But it just popped up on Instagram one time, and I thought it was well said. So
I've seen it circulate on my feeds multiple times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the quote, and then I'm going to ask you the follow-up question based off of this quote, okay? And I'm not going to do it in the Scott voice or, do anything like that. So I hope I don't slip up on any words. So here we go. Hardcore is meeting a kid from halfway across the world for the first time and feeling like you have known him or her for all of your life. Hardcore is driving 8 hours when you are flat broke to see a band most people would say that they can't play their instruments and that you can't understand their singer. Hardcore is knowing that your phone bill will kill you. That's the out of dateness, because most people got like the unlimited whatever, but maybe not at the time of this. Hardcore is road trips, touring, and meeting people. Hardcore is a teacher teaching we are all equal, that colors or sexual preferences don't matter. Hardcore teaches that animals are not ours to kill and to open our mind and question everything. Hardcore is moshing in your bedroom. Hardcore is energy, emotion, and anger. Hardcore is that feeling when I see or hear new bands that send chills down my spine. Scott Vogel, Terror. So the question is, what is hardcore in 2020 in this style of hardcore is blank? So when you think of the current state of hardcore, how would you essentially continue on that quote in that style?
Well, that was asked what hardcore is to me. So, like you could change a couple of the things around. And since now we can snap, but there's no more road trips. But I mean, it's all the same to me.
It's all the same.
I would hope, let's say that was 20 years ago. I don't know.
Sure.
But that's a good guess. I've hopefully grown as a person. I've hopefully changed some things for the better. I've hung on to some bad habits. I'm not perfect. But essentially the way I think about hardcore is similar. My band is similar, and my mindset and love and care and concern is similar. So I'm with all of that. Even the part that I said that I eat meat now, that's just out of total selfishness. I still think we probably shouldn't fucking eat animals. So I still agree with it. I just can't live up to it anymore.
Yeah. Well, maybe that was the secret answer that I wasn't expecting, is that all of those words, maybe aside from the phone bill situation, are just as applicable in 2020 as it was maybe 20 years ago when you said it. But I think that's that collection of words, and I'm sure, maybe I'll put, because I can do this in the episode, is like what it like hardcore is, and fill in the blank of this episode. It's like a little additive. So if you're listening and you want to add your hardcore is blank, check on the episode and maybe you can do that. Scott, one more question before we start to wrap up officially. I ask every guest who comes on the show this question, and you are in line to properly retire from mosh retirement. So I feel like there's a ton to pull from here. Tell me a mosh related story, anything that's first to your mind. It could have happened to you. It could have been something that you did at a show you were at, a terror show, anything else. Whatever's first to your mind when it comes to a mosh related story is how to start to wrap up this wonderful interview.
I've broke my hand twice, once moshing to 18 Visions, once moshing to No Turning Back. I broke my ribs stage diving to First Blood. One time I was seeing the band up front. They're like a really old Connecticut band. Was it up front or was it Shelter? One time I was up front, and the singer smashed me in the face, and I bit through this part of my face. What do you call this? Not my chin, but my whatever this is.
In between the chin and the bottom lip.
I'm just coming up with mosh. One time in Canada, we were on tour with Madball, and we played a show like north of Toronto. And this is back, this is 15 years ago. We played a show north of Toronto, and out in the middle of nowhere in Canada, and there was 30 people at the show. All of Terror was moshing. That was really cool. One time we played in Texas with Bitter End. All of Terror was moshing. That was cool.
When's the last time that all of Terror was moshing together? I know Martine's the gatekeeper when it comes to you, but when's the last time everyone was moshing?
Probably that Bitter End show. I mean, everyone at the same time.
Sure.
That doesn't happen too often anymore. Shit. I remember the first time I saw Marauder in Albany. I was older, but so this is probably 95. So I was probably 25, but I was literally scared of those people. So I just moshed for a minute to say that I did it. And then I was like, get me the fuck out of here.
No more.
I don't know. There's a lot. I'll tell you the final mosh story. So
Please.
Zero Tolerance is the band from Buffalo that got me into hardcore. I looked up to them like they were gods. I still do. They still are. I think every city has a band that they grew up on that's not so known all over the world, but to you, they're the greatest thing ever. So Zero Tolerance is opening up for Bad Brains at a venue in Buffalo that didn't really do hardcore shows. The opening band was playing. I, of course, was moshing. I got kicked out of the show for moshing. This place wasn't going to allow moshing. So I'm outside all fucking pissed off. The guitar player from Zero Tolerance comes on, and these people knew who I was because I was a super fan and would always go off to their band, but I didn't know them. They're like probably 5 years older than me. And at that time, you know, I'm like 15, they're like 20. They don't want to fucking hang out with me. So the guitar player comes up to me and he's like, yo, I saw what happened. Come with me. They sneak me into the back door. So now I'm backstage with Zero Tolerance. They're getting ready to play. Their singer comes up to me. I've never spoken to this guy in my life. And he's like literally a god to me. He's like, hey, I saw what happened. Switch shirts with me. So when you go back out there, they don't know who you are. So now I have his shirt on. I'm in the crowd. He's on stage with my shirt on. And at this time, they're huge in Buffalo. There's probably 1,000 people there. The first band was some like weird band that like I said, I just moshed at the time. So I was just going off to them, but no one was really, but I think it was a 3-band bill. So now Zero Tolerance second, they hit their first note. Everyone goes crazy. There's no way security can contain this. But that's one of my favorite moshing stories. Like I'm in the crowd with this dude's shirt on and he's on stage with my shirt
with
on.
your shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're like, I'm never washing this shirt. I'm just gonna like encase it in chrome or something. That is so funny. Scott, what a wonderful chat with someone that I am a huge fan of, both for terror reasons, but also just your impact on hardcore. It's undeniable. Anything you want to shout out, plug, anything you want to send the people off with before we wrap up? The floor is yours.
No, I just would say if you haven't checked out Terror in a while, check out the new record. I think it's really good. And I don't want to plug anything. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you caring about hardcore. You had some pretty fun questions. And
I hope they were good questions.
No, just fun.
Oh, just fun?
Just joking. Hopefully we'll be up there soon. We haven't been to Seattle. We haven't been to Portland and Seattle in a while. Maybe we can figure something out where we hit those two and end up in maybe even Winnipeg.
Dude, I have the people to help make that work. So the minute that becomes an interest and a possibility off of your crazy schedule, just let me know.
If we come there and it's not JFK, he might be really upset.
Well, JFK is definitely doing the Alberta shows for sure. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Scott, thank you again for coming on the podcast. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Thanks for having me. Have a great night.